Hello and welcome to Find Out Nation. I'm one of your hosts, Jamie.
I'm one of your hosts, Nicole.
And we are here to talk about the latest goings on in a nation that has fucked around and is about to find out. Actually, I would venture to say we're starting to find out now with the latest. Yeah. So where are we at with the countdown to the inauguration?
15 days.
15 days. It's getting closer and closer.
Yes.
You had to point out to me that tomorrow, so we're recording this on January 5th. I don't know if you can see, but it is a avalanche.
It's a blizzard in Kansas City.
We're in the Midwest, and climate change is alive and well here.
Yes.
But it is the 5th of January when we're recording this. Tomorrow is the 6th. It is the anniversary of the
insurrection.
Yep. I would venture to say the traitorous attack on the United States of America by these patriotic MAGA dipshits, right?
Yes.
So Trump's own inauguration is coming up, 15 days.
Yep.
We're snowed in, so we won't be there to cause our own insurrection.
Yes. No, not at all. Yeah.
No, not at all. Unfortunately, we're going to have to just stay here in our homes and, be peaceful citizens and not, be traitorous.
With the transition of power. Yeah. And tomorrow, Kamala Harris will do her job and do it well, and she'll certify the results of the vote of the election. And he'll end up getting sworn in.
That's right.
Unfortunately.
Okay. Yeah. I'm doing dry January.
Good for you.
I feel like this was a bad time to pick.
To do it.
Maybe I should have tried dry February instead.
February?
I'm just saying.
Girl, I don't know. It might be, you could be forgiven for having to have a drink in January. I think you better do it and get it over with, because I don't have high hopes that the rest of the year where there's ever going to be a time we can do a dry anything.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Like, I don't necessarily know that the dryness gets any easier in February, March, April. Nope. It still sucks.
25, 26, 27. Like, I'm just not sure.
Indeed. Okay. So the first topic I want to talk about is the H-1B visa fight.
Yes.
We talked about this on our last podcast a bit, and I had, you and I had talked, and of course I had expressed support of the H-1B visa because, anything that increases our ability for immigrants to come over legally, I'm all for. Yeah. Since then,
hearing you say that, I'm just like, why would any rational person not be a fan of that? I don't understand.
Because they have brown skin.
This is controversial.
Because our irrational brothers and sisters that are Americans, if they have brown skin, then, which
and they think they're taking their jobs. That's literally not what's happening.
Okay. Yeah. And so to your point, so I watched The Young Turks. It's one of my downfalls, but I love The Young Turks. I think they're great.
Yeah, I do too.
And I love them all. Yeah. But I will say that, they continue to call H-1B visas indentured servitude. You and I touched on this in our last podcast. Yeah. Well, I hate this idea of because the right or Elon Musk is for these, that the immigration policies are just bad, right? I hate that. Yeah. H-1B visas does not mean a person has to continue working for whomever is sponsoring them. No. We've talked about this before. And so on the left, while I agree that the way that Elon Musk and Ramaswamy and all of those corporate dipshits want to use H-1B visas is bad.
Yeah. Right.
The real fight should not be against legal immigration and the, avenues towards it. It should be against these dumb fuckers like Elon Musk that take advantage and try and harm people by putting them into situations that they can't get out of.
They feel they can't get out of. Yeah.
Right.
They are having to stay there. Yeah,
exactly. So there was there was an article about a person, and I can't remember where he was working, Disney or something like that. And he was required, in order to get his bonus from his layoff, he was required to stay on and then train someone that was getting hosted for an H-1B visa. And he was talking about how devastating it was, that this was literally an example of someone taking American jobs. And to that point, I understand the point of being mad at the scenario, but at my company, I saw an entire department of, I don't know, a dozen people that were laid off because we outsourced their jobs to India, where they could be done by basically RPA robots, right? Like just robots that could go in and do like follow a set of instructions and just get something done. So as liberals, as leftists, I want us to not be so focused on that, on like new avenues to immigration, and instead get pissed off about these corporations that are using them just like they use everything else, tax laws and rules and whatever. Like they're using those things to their betterment to screw the American worker. Our enemy is not avenues to immigration. Our enemy is corporate fucking greed. Exactly.
And that's literally the conversation we've been having in different ways this whole time. If people really did research, if people really paid attention, which is why Trump's like, no, look at this shiny thing over here, because I don't want to have a class war. Because that's really what it should fucking be.
Exactly.
Everybody,
right. Okay. But can we talk about the unhinged goddamn text messages? Twitter messages.
Yes.
Okay, so we know that Elon Musk and Steve Bannon are in a fight.
Yes.
We saw the text, or I keep saying text. Because I keep mixing up tweet and X, and like it turns into text.
Yes.
So if I say text, you know I mean
we can call it a text.
I still want to call it a tweet just to piss Elon Musk off. So we're going to call it a tweet. We saw the Ramaswamy's tweet about, America's a culture that values the prom queen over like the math
and they're
Olympiad.
Lazy and they're not smart.
Exactly. Like, come on. Like, it just screams of, I was a dork in high school and you all picked on me. And so now I'm punishing you. Like it just screams such ineptitude that I'm like, you look like you should be embarrassed, right?
Well, like your ego, your fragility is
your
on
masculine
loud display. I'm going to need 100%. You to calm down.
Yes. And then you have on the other side, Steve Bannon, who's like, I'll rip your face off.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't care how much money you gave to the campaign.
Right.
I speak for the MAGA diehards. And literally I'll rip your face. Like, what are we doing?
Who yes. Who
and
does
Elon
this?
Musk telling the MAGA diehards to literally go fuck yourself.
Yes.
Oh no, take a big step back and fuck yourself in the face. I will go to war on the issue of this, the likes you cannot comprehend. Like,
I know.
Is this what tears them apart? Like,
so, and here's to me the big difference. Like, as much as you and I have disagreed with like mainstream Democrats and establishment Democrat policies and the DNC, I would never like, even if I disagreed, it never comes down to, I'm going to rip your fucking face off, right? It never does that. And this is where fundamentally a party that roots itself in fear ends up also rooting itself in violence.
And every time, y'all, in history, go back and look.
Exactly.
Every time. The Romans did it. The Germans did it. Like, everybody does it. The Russians have done it.
Correct. Yeah. Germans were scared of Jews in the same way that Republicans are scared of brown people.
Yeah.
And they would tell you, I'm not, whatever. And it all leads to violence. And so this is where it's like, if we can hang our hat on anything, let's try and continue hanging our hat on this idea of, at least we're not dissolving into violence. And to your point, is this what takes them down? Because like it only takes a tiny bit of escalation from go fuck yourself and I'm going to rip your face off to I'm coming to your house with a goddamn gun. Right.
Well, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong or to argue with me if you don't agree. But I feel like with Trump in particular, policy has never been what he gives a shit about. There has never been. So this time around, even less so than the first time around, because this whole time around was his need to get elected, to stay the fuck out of prison and to make sure that he didn't get held accountable for his crimes. And so now you've got Ramaswamy and Musk saying, here's the fucking policies you're going to do because I don't want to be held responsible to the EPA. I want to be able to do what I want to do with my companies and not have to answer to anybody. And Steve Bannon's over here like, no, this is not what MAGA was founded on. We were promised 10 to 20 million people were going to be deported.
Yep.
And that's what
Well,
we expect.
so I 100,000% agree with you that I also feel that Trump's focus is not and has never been policy. And I
Yeah.
actually had a conversation with some friends last week about that exact thing, that like really when it comes, like you saw, I mean, as soon as Elon Musk started talking about H-1B visas, Trump's like, okay, fine, sure, whatever.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
He is so self-serving that the
Mm-hmm.
idea of policies to better the country in my mind has never been his
Never been
focus
there. Nope.
ever. It's
Nope.
always just been setting precedent in whatever he does to do whatever makes his world better. And
Yeah.
in the previous
Hence the
presidency,
tax
right,
cuts for the top
exactly.
1%.
In the last presidency, it was all about the tax write-offs for the wealthy so that he
Yep.
could enjoy those tax write-offs.
Yep.
This one is all about making sure that he doesn't go to fucking jail
Yeah.
and making sure that after the presidency, he has avenues to cash, which is what Elon
Yep.
Musk gives him. So
Yep.
at the end of the day, like, I 1000%
Which is why
agree with you.
that's why when people say that Musk is the shadow president, I agree.
Yes.
I agree.
And to me, there's not even a shadow. Like,
Mm-mm.
you know what I mean? Like,
That's true. He's taking phone calls with world leaders to discuss things that are
Yep.
not within his realm as a non-elected official.
Yep. Yes.
It's
There's no shadow.
very scary.
It's clear.
very scary.
It's clear.
Like,
Yes.
because I think his conversation was with Netanyahu. And
So, yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Moving on.
Yes.
The Speaker of the House was reelected. Barely.
Talking about dorks who can't get
No shit. I was watching, what was I watching? Was it, I can't remember what it was. It was probably The Daily Show because, you know, I love The Daily Show. And they were talking about how Johnson kept talking about, oh, don't worry, I'm on a text chain with Elon Musk. I'm on a text chain with Elon Musk. And they were like, this sounds like a little brother who's like,
Yes.
oh, don't worry, I'm still part of the group.
Yes,
I'm still part of the group
exactly.
when clearly you're not still part of the group,
I mean,
right?
I still can't get over the picture of them on Trump's plane eating the McDonald's, and he's just like leaned over the back of like RFK Jr.'s seat. Like, I'm here, guys. Like, literally not sitting at the table.
You know.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
100%.
Just a total fucking dork.
Oh God. I know. And the
so
thing
desperate for approval and inclusion.
That's what it is.
That makes him dangerous as Speaker of the House.
Yes, that's what it is that like he's so desperate for approval and inclusion.
Yeah.
And you're right. Like the picture of him just trying to be a part of the group, that to me is 100% indicative of what his Speaker of the Housedom is like. Really reminds me of like, oh, don't worry, I'm still part of this, when I truly believe he's been kept in there just because he's 100%
because he's weak,
agreeable to do whatever they want. Exactly, he's weak.
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, I watched Benny Thompson on on MSNBC this morning. Simone Sanders and Michael Steele were talking to him, and he said, you know, that the president is not supposed to have a direct line to Congress. Like, that's not, like, he shouldn't be able to call somebody and wield influence, because those people are elected by their constituents at home. And that's who their first priority of protecting and passing laws and doing all those things. It should be to their constituents at home, not to the president. It's why we have a separation of power. But the fact that he was able to call Mike Johnson and tell Mike Johnson, here's what you need to do.
Yep.
And Mike Johnson pulled 3 people into a room and said, here's what Trump says we need to do. And then 2 of those 3 people said, okay, I'll vote for you on these concessions.
Yep.
It should be very frightening to people. And I don't think it is.
Yep.
Because I don't think people understand or care to understand or give it the weight that it truly has.
Well, and to your point, this is exactly where, because the founding fathers intended for, exactly to your point, that our houses really represented the people.
Yes.
And that was supposed to be where the central like power of government lived. And so for our president to have a direct line and to also control the Supreme Court is where I think we're also concerned.
Yes.
With that said, the good news is I don't think Trump gives 2 shits about policy. So at the end of the day, we'll see what happens. But I'm hopeful that, you know, there's so much infighting between these like factions of MAGA that we get as much done as we did the first
I mean,
time.
MTG has already said, like,
Yep.
Johnson's one step away from pissing her off enough that she's going to do what, attempt to do what they did to McCarthy.
Yep.
I doubt. I will be shocked if he finishes out the year, let alone the 2 years.
Agreed.
There's no way.
I 1000% agree.
Yeah.
And I can see them switching speakers and then switching again.
Oh, yeah.
Unless I could see if Elon Musk gets elected as Speaker of the House, that there might be something there. But to your point, I will be shocked if he lasts the year. I'll be surprised if he lasts if until this fucking snow thaws.
Oh yeah, that's true.
I mean, to be honest,
so
I'll be shocked.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, you brought up Simone Sanders.
Yes.
All right, who generally I love Simone Sanders.
I do too.
But she recently came out, and while prior to the election, she was very anti-progressives, very much establishment Democrats. I was telling you that James Carville came out just a few days ago as well. And both came out in fervent support of progressive policies. James Carville even published an article that says, I was wrong. You should not have listened to me. Should have been the economy. We should have been focused on like things that we didn't do. The U.S. economy is the strongest in the world. The GDP is soaring. Inflation is subsiding. And the American people still did not settle for us being better than the rest or take that as good enough because Trump convinced middle class and low income voters that the economy was going to be better under him. And Carville says Democrats have flat out lost the economic narrative. Okay.
Yep.
So first of all, again, I admitted to listening to the Young Turks on the regular.
Yeah.
And they are eviscerating our brothers and sisters who were so anti-progressive policies and so established Democrats. And they're like, told you so.
Right.
Okay. So while there's a part of me, I mean, you and I, again, were big Bernie Sanders supporters, big Elizabeth Warren supporters. I don't love all the Elizabeth Warren regulations as much, but I do believe in all of her economic and progressive policies, especially when it comes to like big businesses. You and I have always been very supportive of those policies, and that you and I both, I think, agree that is really should be the focus of future Democrats, right? It feels good for some big names in our Democratic party to be saying, I was wrong. You guys were right. We should have been focused on the economy. And we need to take that even a step further. And again, focus on this class war in my mind, because I don't think you will meet, whether they're MAGA or not, I don't think you will meet a middle class or even low income voter who says, oh yeah, I'm fine with the way things are now. All of
my stuff. No. Yeah. And because a lot of them are panicking about the very resources that they rely on and need being cut. And it's going to happen. It will happen.
That's exactly right. And so to me, like if we talked in our last or one of our last podcasts about our non-negotiables.
Yeah.
What, as we as a party say 100%, these are our non-negotiables. This should be one. The economy, but specifically a focus on corporate and 1% greed has to be part of our non-negotiables as a party.
Yes.
And it should be the foundation of all of our policymaking going forward.
Yeah. 1,000%.
And you see people like AOC that believe in that. You see people like Bernie Sanders that believes in that. And if we as a party don't get behind that, we're going to continue losing. There's just no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, yes.
So I will say I was encouraged this weekend because I think the Simone Sanders came out maybe last Sunday about it. And then James Carville released his article just 3 days ago. So again, big name. And what's funny is when you look at things like Pod Save America or the Young Turks, like our media, the left-wing media has been focused on these like class wars. We have to address this for so long. And the fact that it's taken this long for the DNC or at least some like major players in the DNC to listen to it is shocking in my mind. So anyway, I wanted to just talk about that because you did mention Simone Sanders' name, which of course, I was like, oh, she was one of them that mentioned that the other day. So I thought that was interesting. Okay. The terrorist attacks.
Yeah. On New Year's Day.
New Year's Day, pretty devastating for the country. And to your point, I think one of the real struggles has been that the media has been reluctant to call it a terrorist attack, except when saying the FBI has labeled this a terrorist attack. New Orleans. So what was that? New Year's Eve, right?
No, it was
New
New
Year's
Year's
Eve?
Day. It was
New
like
Year's
3
Day?
a.m. on New Year's Day.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. It was
Yeah.
the night of. So I'm just
Yeah.
thinking about,
Yeah.
Guy rents, so he lives in Texas, right? He
Mm-hmm.
rents a truck from some company I never heard of. Like I had
Turo
never
or
heard
something
of,
like that. I'd never heard of it either. Yeah.
no. He-
Turo. So, yeah.
yeah,
Turo or something. I had no idea that that was even a thing.
me neither. But he rents a truck, drives to New Orleans, and basically plows down Bourbon Street. He kills 14 people last,
15 people so far.
15 people so far. Countless others are injured. It's just devastating. Okay. The worst part in my mind with this, obviously, the loss of life is horrific. And there were stories about people who, like, were they're on vacation and they're just in, I mean,
Yeah.
that's the thing is, right? Bourbon Street is designed to be like a joyous, enjoyable, and
Yeah.
to have this happen,
I
like,
mean,
is terrifying.
It's devastating. Well, and I told you when we came back from New Orleans, our first trip in October to New Orleans, and I was like, I didn't realize Bourbon Street was a street you could drive on. Because every time I've ever seen it in movies or on TV,
It's packed with people.
It's packed with people. So I just assumed you don't drive down Bourbon Street. It's literally a one-way street.
Yep.
People still walk down the middle of the road while the beer trucks are trying to get to the bars to deliver beer and do all the things.
Yep.
But it is mainly pedestrian.
Yep.
And I have pictures from when we were there of just like a random Tuesday at 2:00 in the afternoon, packed with people.
Yep.
Cannot even imagine on New Year's what that is like.
Right. 100%. But what really added insult to injury was the next day. Of course, most politicians were all about, I want to give my, heartfelt, sincere
thoughts and prayers, and
thoughts and prayers to families and this and that. But Donald Trump took it as an opportunity to say, oh, he was brown with a funny name. He was an immigrant. And clearly this is why all the immigrants are terrible and they need to be kicked out of the country.
Yeah. I mean, and he said this is proof that the immigrants kill more Americans than Americans kill Americans. This is why I want to deport people.
That's right.
And then it blew up in his fucking face like we knew that it would.
That's exactly right. Because why, Nicole?
Because he was a born and bred American citizen, ex-U.S. military.
That's right. So, I mean, and this 100% was a terrorist attack. I fully agree. But absolutely, the suspect, which I understand he had beliefs, but the crux of the matter is that he was an American citizen. Like, you cannot use this just because he was brown and just because he has a funny name to say, oh, this is an example of why we should not have immigrants. Well, I watched what was I watching the other day? Was it Fox News? Well, it was, I can't remember, but it was Fox News who was talking about the terror attacks and how terrible they are and pointing at how awful the New Orleans massacre was, while showing video of Kyle Rittenhouse, who MAGA absolutely was a fucking hero and and they were showing video of Kyle Rittenhouse, but talking about how terrible the New Orleans attacks were when they had just a little while ago been talking about, yes, Kyle is an American patriot and we stand behind him, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Well, and I do want to say too, the reason he drove his truck down Bourbon Street is because he had planted explosives in other parts of the French Quarter and along Bourbon Street, and they did not explode like they were supposed to. So he felt like he had no other choice but to plow his truck down Bourbon Street.
Yep.
So I think this is a conversation, and I don't want to derail from what we're talking about, but this is a conversation that my husband and I have had since this happened, is that I feel like this is going to start becoming the norm in this country for terrorist attacks, that 9/11 type terror event is probably not going to happen again because this is so much more effective and easier to do. You have a mass gathering of people. You can kill a lot of people at one time. And this is how ISIS and Al Qaeda fight their wars in their country. And he had an ISIS flag in the back of his truck. And I just worry that we are not prepared as a country for what that looks like.
So I would agree. I will say that I disagree that we won't see a 9/11 type attack again, because to your point, it was so effective and it took so few people to carry out an attack that killed just so many people.
Yeah,
That I do
that's
think
true.
that we are still vulnerable to an attack that's similar to that. But to your point, those are the things that I honestly feel like our country does a better job, I think, of getting their arms around. That these types of attacks, it's we saw the Oklahoma City bombing, and
Yeah.
we saw Kyle Rittenhouse. Like, we've seen these types of terrorist
Mm-hmm.
attacks that I would agree that these are the things that we have no way to fight against. And
Right.
to your point, I realize that in this case, it was very much, philosophically based in like fundamental differences with the American, but we see these types of attacks all the time, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
shooting people up in a movie theater, whether it's
Yep.
driving through a Black Lives Matter movement,
Out of your hotel room in Las
it's
Vegas.
shooting out.
Yeah.
Exactly correct. These are the types of things that we're struggling with as a nation.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I think what's bothering me so much is that, especially a party that is, and don't get me wrong, the guy that, ran over a bunch of people in New Orleans, I don't believe that he's necessarily Democrat, Republican, whatever.
Right.
I've read nothing about his political ideations except for
Yeah.
the fact that, like, he was a Muslim. He came back to his faith. He had the flag, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, like, anytime you have a nation that's rooted so much in fear, the natural response to that fear is violence.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where just this rhetoric is so, and there's, in my mind, there's no more clear example of that than Kyle Rittenhouse, right? Where,
Yeah.
well, I'm doing the Lord's work, so I'm going to plow into these
Yep.
fucking people. And then
Yep.
for you to turn around and Luigi is just a murderer and the world's worst person and whatever, when many people believe that he is fighting in self-defense, like, the hypocrisy is
Against the
real.
corrupt system. Yeah.
If we are going to fix this as a nation, we all have to get on the same page.
Yeah.
That killing each other is not the right answer, regardless of the reason why.
Yes.
And
Yes.
where are the fundamental problems? And that includes our insurance companies. I think we all agree.
Yeah.
And I'll say that American citizens wholeheartedly believe that insurance companies are a bunch of bullshit, and we should not be letting insurance companies figure out who should live and die. So
Right.
there's that. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, like, we're going to have to agree as a country that, like, killing each other is never the answer, whether right,
Well,
left,
that
whatever.
life is sacred, right?
Mhm.
When we're
Correct.
telling women what they can do with their bodies, life is sacred.
Yep.
But any other time, not so much.
That's right. That's right. You can mow anyone down in a car
Yep.
that you want to.
Yep.
On the other side of the goddamn country was the Cybertruck, the Green Beret in the Cybertruck blowing up in front of Trump Tower,
Yes.
with a manifesto that was basically like, hey, I'm doing this to cure the country's ills.
Yeah.
Okay, it's hard to believe that this guy was not politically motivated,
Right.
blowing up a Cybertruck in front of Trump Tower.
Yeah.
But we have not seen anything yet that says this wasn't politically motivated, except for the fact that the country has ills.
Right.
I have not read anything else about this guy except, like, his outstanding medical military background. He was a
Yeah.
Green Beret, like, he was well
Still
trained.
active. Yeah.
Mhm. So
Yeah.
I haven't seen anything else. Have you?
No. I mean, the people that were in his unit, I mean, they've all said, like, they didn't have any idea that he felt this way. His behavior hadn't been off. There were no indications that he had a mental health issue that they needed to be concerned about. Like, nothing.
Yeah.
Like, they all seem to be just as shocked as anybody else about it.
Well, and they said that they were able to recover information from one of his two phones that said he was suffering from PTSD, which, holy fucking shit. Like, that's the other thing. How are we not, how is this not at this point a national crisis, for crying out loud?
Because let's be clear, there's one party that is all about our military, and not that the Democrats are not, but there is one party that loves to use our military as, we must do everything to protect them. And then we send them to war, and then they come home and we just fucking let them flounder.
And I don't want to say they, because I agree.
Yeah.
From my perspective, you have Donald Trump that gets up on stage and makes fun of the, military people who get caught and shit like that. So yeah, you talk a big game of like, oh yeah, because and this is fundamentally what drives me crazy about MAGA voters, especially Trump voters, is they talk about his authenticism. Okay. But he talks about how much he supports the troops and, I support the military.
How patriotic he is.
That's right.
Yeah.
But then he makes fun of our military because they were captured. Like, are you kidding me? Right. This is the kind of shit that I'm like, okay, how is this authentic? He obviously doesn't care about the military. I'm positive, like, and the Republicans constantly like neglect those social programs that actually do things for our veterans and take care of our soldiers and like try and like better our soldiers and our veterans to make their lives better. They constantly are trying to cut those programs because, well, those are social programs. We don't need those things. And yet we continue to see these problems. And again, both the right and the left, I think, agree in a lot of cases that mental health and mental illness is a problem in this fucking country. Clearly, it's a problem. Yeah. And one of the ways that we could really attack mental health is to have universal health care, to make like mental health facilities and therapy and things widely available to anyone that needs it. Because let me tell you, when I was dirt fucking poor, I was a brand new kid. I was making like $5 an hour. When I felt depression or had mental health issues, I didn't have the $40 required to spend an hour at a therapist, right? I did not have extra. To me, a therapist, and right or wrong, well, and that's any medical need that I had, whether it was a therapist, whether it was like, I don't know, a regular checkup, whether it was antibiotics, all of those were extravagances that I didn't have the money to afford because I needed to pay for groceries and rent and this and that.
And they are extravagances still to this day.
Day. And so to that point, if we want to talk about fixing mental health in this country, you want to keep your guns, fine. But then you have to support mental health initiatives through universal health care. It's that simple. And it doesn't seem like that hard an equation to get to, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, he came out that on his phone, he had no ill will towards the president, towards Trump. So regardless of the fact that it was in front of the Trump Tower, apparently he did not have concerns with, and he's labeled himself a no label voter, that he did not have any labels, that he wasn't trying to, label himself as a Republican or Democrat. So I do feel bad for the people that have gone through this. I feel bad for those people the families that had to get a phone call on New Year's Day about their, and
I'm glad that with the Trump Tower situation, 7 people were injured. They are all going to make a recovery. It could have been so much worse. I'm glad the only person that died in that scenario was the driver of the vehicle that orchestrated it.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, yeah. It's rough. Rough times right now.
Yeah.
But there is a little light. We said goodbye to Jimmy Carter, which was devastating. Jimmy Carter was probably Jimmy Carter, Mr. Rogers, Bob Ross, Steve Irwin. We've got the people that there's no doubt are going to go to heaven. And I know there are a lot of people that hated Jimmy Carter. And I know we had a lot of problems with energy and things like that when Jimmy Carter was
his presidency
in office. But there's no doubt that the man, number one, believed with all of his heart in the goodness of caring for your fellow man and taking care of America as, as a country. Like he believed, right?
Yeah.
But the last gift he's given us, which I have read, is absolutely fucking torturing our future president.
Yes.
Is that the flag will be flown half-mast during the inauguration. Oh, Jimmy Carter.
Because it's a 30-day decree.
That is
Yeah.
the real work that you've
Yeah.
done. That surpasses all of your Habitat for Humanity work. Like this is the thing. This is the thing that
Yes.
and my husband was the one that had to like let me know, hey, you know that this is going to happen. And I was like, oh, I didn't even think about it.
Yeah. And he's losing his mind over it.
So much so that you sent me a message last night that he is going to host his own Trump rally the day before.
The day before the inauguration. They're doing it at some event arena that holds 20,000 people.
Oh,
We both know, right, from the first time go round that the man is obsessed with crowd size. And so I'm like, okay, is this going to be his feel good moment that he's going to spin it as like, we had 20,000 in the arena. We had all these others that were outside that couldn't get in because we know that the crowd size on the mall is going to be just as pitiful as it was the first time around.
how small does his penis have to be?
Oh, it has to be microscopic.
That's what I was going to say. Do we think it's a micro penis? It has to be, right?
I think it has to be, I think it's smaller
Okay.
than a micro.
I
think
am
it is
disappointed.
a scientific miracle on how tiny it must be
I
to still function.
I need to really like, I wish Stormy Daniels had at least come out and like confirmed.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Yes.
I
that
really
would at
do.
least be the gift she could have given us
I
out of all of
agreed.
that.
Agreed. Like, to be perfectly honest, I mean, so there's the painting that came out that is Trump with the micro penis. Have you seen this?
Oh, yes. That came out the first presidency or when he was running before. Yeah.
I think it was his first presidency, if I remember correctly, because it was quite a while ago.
Yeah, it was hilarious.
I mean, it's a micro penis.
Yes.
I have to believe that's true. It's the only explanation for why he is the way that he is, right? Like it's the only.
He's very insecure.
Oh yeah.
I mean, insecurity is loud, and he is a perfect example of that.
Yes, 100%. So there's no doubt. And what I really enjoy about the micro penis picture, which I just Googled for one more, there's no ball sack. Like there's such little ball sack that it's like, wow.
Yeah.
It's really, do you know we can buy it for $1.5 million?
Oh.
I wonder if it's still, I wonder if it's still
a lot of money for a micro penis.
Right. I wonder if it's still available for purchase. If it is, I would almost venture to like, let's do a GoFundMe just to purchase it.
Oh
and
my God.
I'll hang it back here for all to see for
every time.
Right. Like I'll put it right. I'm just saying. So regardless, like, I mean, that's the only reason why we're having a rally, inauguration rally.
Because I want everyone to remember that that's what the inauguration day is. That's what inauguration day is.
That's right.
You can go if you so choose and have the ability and the means, and you can celebrate on the National Mall while
the inauguration of your candidate. That's right.
Yeah, it's like, that's what it is. That's why we televise it all fucking day long from beginning to end, is so that those of us who can't make it have the ability to participate. That's what inauguration day is in this country. So the fact that he feels he needs to have a rally the day before, are you worried you're not going to get inaugurated? Like, is there something in the works that I don't know about that, like, this has got you worked up? What's going on?
Right. So I was watching George Stephanopoulos, whatever his show is, and of course he's not on right now because it's the holidays or whatever. So the guy, the guy that always stands in for George Stephanopoulos, who, by the way, keeps saying the word toddler as toddler. It drives me crazy. If you watch, it's like ABC morning, whatever. It's the Sunday
like the
morning
GMA
show.
or something.
I can't remember
Sunday
what they're
morning.
called. Yeah.
Yeah.
So whatever the one that George Stephanopoulos normally does. The guy that's on there, he says, so with the whole Steve Bannon fight, and he kept talking about them calling each other toddlers, and he kept saying toddler. And I'm like, okay, sir, it's not toddler.
That's
You're
not
driving
how
me
you
crazy.
say that word.
But regardless. So, they have their 4-panel review or whatever.
Yes.
And what they were saying on there is that he's doing it because for the regular inauguration, he can't get up and speak to his constituents the way that he
And
normally
just,
speaks to them. So this is his opportunity to just stand up and say whatever he wants to say.
yeah.
I am with you. I feel like he does not feel that he's going to get the crowds at his inauguration that he thinks he is, because he didn't last time. So why would he this time? Especially because, like, why would he? So he thinks that having the rally will draw more people to him and get more people there. That's my guess, but who the fuck knows?
Yeah.
Okay, well, regardless, I am just delighted that Jimmy Carter gave us this one final
gift.
That's right. To say, you know what? Go fuck yourself, Donald Trump. You get flags at half-mast for a Democratic president. Ha, 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 ha.
Exactly. Yes.
All right. Any other comments that you have? Any other things you want to bring up today?
Just real quick, I want to touch on a few things that are in the rules package for the House. Once they elected Johnson again, then they set up their rules package. So just to touch on a few big ones that were big takeaways for me. Mm-hmm. They're amending the National Voter Registration Act of 1993 to require proof of U.S. citizenship to register to vote in federal elections. Pause for a second on that before I read the last part to you, because already a thing that exists.
Exactly. Why would we need that? I know when I registered to vote, I had to show that, okay, here's my driver's license. Come on.
Yes. Okay. But here's why I think we're doing this, because at the end of it, it says, and for other purposes. Oh. What other purposes would I need to prove my citizenship? Mm-hmm. That to me is concerning.
Yeah.
They're going to prohibit a moratorium on fracking. So Oklahoma, get used to earthquakes.
That's right.
They have made up a new rule to amend Title 18 of the U.S. Code to prohibit a healthcare practitioner from failing to exercise the proper degree of care in the case of a child who survives an abortion. This is so ambiguous and vague to me. It's dangerous. Okay. So first of all,
read it again. Can you read it again? Okay. Read it again.
Yeah. They're making up a new rule to amend Title 18 of the U.S. Code to prohibit a healthcare practitioner, which could be a nurse, could be a doctor, could be any, from failing to exercise the proper degree of care in the care of a child who survives an abortion.
Okay.
So, right.
Okay, sorry. I should not cut you off.
It's okay. Go ahead. You're fine.
Okay. So, first of all, to your point, it's remarkably ambiguous. What is the appropriate level of care? What do they consider?
What constitutes a child?
Right. What do they think?
I mean, they consider
Right. And what do they think about how many babies are surviving abortion? Like abortions.
What? Right. This is going to be the new narrative now.
Yes.
And this whole turning it back over to the states, this is what's going to make it even like in Missouri, where we just had a vote to enshrine abortion in our state constitution. This is going to be the kind of language that the states are going to be like, well, here's what the federal government's doing. Here's what the federal government's saying. So yes, you can have an abortion in this state because you voted to enshrine it in our constitution. However, we're saying that if that child is born alive, or if care is, if that child was survivable at any point and you failed to do something as the healthcare provider to save the life of that child, now you're in trouble. So we're going to have healthcare providers that are like, it's great that we could do an abortion here. I'm not willing to go to prison for it.
Yeah.
Because somebody decides I didn't do enough, that I botched the abortion and I didn't do enough to save the life of the child.
Well, so abortions and late stage pregnancy are so rare anyway.
Always to save the life of the mother.
So the life of the mother. Always. That's right.
I can speak on it personally.
Yeah.
Always to save the life of the mother.
That's right. And it still is just ridiculously rare to have happen. Yes. I don't know. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
What do we think we're protecting here?
Right.
What do you think you're protecting?
Because it's not
here?
women.
No, it's not women. And
nope.
Yeah.
And then the very last one that I went through is that, or last two, sorry. So in order to receive Title IX funds for athletics at the collegiate level, because I don't know that you can get Title IX funds at the high school level.
Okay.
They are going to require higher education to recognize sex based solely on reproductive biology and genetics at birth. So if you want your Title IX funds for athletics, you have to decree it in writing as a higher educational facility that it's the sex assigned at birth based on biology.
So here's my thing. I have had a lot of fights over this type of scenario. I do not feel that gender in athletics it's a complicated fight.
I do. I think it's there's a lot of fingers. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's just a lot to it. Yeah. It's not an easy thing to discuss or to figure out.
That's right. So this idea of people who are born with male reproductive organs at birth that then transition to female, and she wants to now compete with other females. Like, I get concerns that people have, but I also get respecting those people that are in those situations, because those are very real situations, right?
Yeah.
I have a lot of, I guess I actually don't have a lot of opinions there, because I see both sides of it. I understand, like, one side, I understand another side. I'm not wildly seeing, like, people in that scenario now competing with women's sports and being wildly overpowered and now taking home at right. I feel like if that was happening on the regular, we would be hearing about it on the regular, especially by Fox fucking News, right?
Right.
And we're not hearing that that's a thing. And so I'm just like, okay, is this really what we need to be fighting about? And to your point, writing laws about, and then, like, restricting Title IX dollars for, like, is this really, like, what we need? Especially because, like,
keep going. Sorry.
Well, and people have different advantages in their body based on whatever. Yeah. And I also get this argument about, the reason why Michael Phelps was such a good swimmer is because he had huge feet, a long wingspan, huge, and huge hands. Yeah. His body was just made that way. Yeah. Shockingly, me too. I have a size 11.5 foot wide. I have short little legs. I have a long torso. I have a huge wingspan, and I have man-sized hands. And I was fucking phenomenal on my swim team. I was a beast when I was a swimmer. So I'm like, okay, I was just naturally a good swimmer because that was how my body was. And I don't understand, like, if they had swim teams in high school at that time, I would have just killed it, but they didn't. Right. And so I fumbled around trying to play tennis and volleyball for a minute and a half and fell down a lot. And then shockingly, I went to debate, and that's where I found my home. Regardless, I also am very loud, and I am very loud. And so I was really good on the debate team. So at the end of the day, like, we all have, like, pluses and minuses that are natural gifts to ourselves that make us better at certain things. And those are the things that we compete in and win in. And I don't understand. Yeah. Like,
and I have a problem with assigning those strengths and or weaknesses to our gender.
Agreed. Because then you have scenarios like that boxer that was in the Olympics who they're like, oh, she was a man. She was a man. She's not a man. Right. She's just really fucking good at her job. And you're pissed about it because she might happen to have masculine traits about her face. She might have a size 11 shoe like a man, or giant man hands. And so you're going to call her a man and say, that's why she's so successful. I 100% agree. Like assigning attributes or skills based on your gender or the gender that you were assigned at birth, go fuck yourself. Yeah. Because if someone was born as with female, reproductive organs, but they have a lot of the traits of masculine, what would be considered traditionally masculine traits that would give them advantages. Now we're calling them all. Well, who's the rugby player? subscribed to her on Instagram. I
Oh
watched
yeah, I
her on
didn't know.
Dancing with the
Yeah.
Stars. You know who I'm
Oh
talking about.
yes. Yeah. Yes.
And they
She's so
constantly,
tall. Yeah,
she's
and tall for a
tall.
man. Yeah.
She's so
Yeah.
muscular that she doesn't have a lot of fat on the front of her. So she doesn't have
Yeah.
giant boobs.
Yeah.
But she is clearly like very
Yeah.
athletic. She's amazing at her job. She did the, swimsuit edition and
Yeah.
got constant comments about she's a man, she's a man, she's a man.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay,
Yeah.
by creating these rules, by creating these laws, you're perpetuating that conversation about,
Yep.
oh, only men can be strong, only women can be caretakers, that kind
Yep.
of bullshit 1950s thinking. And by doing that, like we're stuck there. And so
Yeah.
can we not say instead, oh, we're going to give Title IX to people who value intelligence as much as athletics, or
Right.
to, schools that value, to Ramaswamy's point, that value
Yeah.
mathletes as much as they value the prom
That's
queens
exactly
and the
right.
football, right? So why not
And
attack the things that actually matter instead of this
right.
bullshit that doesn't matter?
And for me, a concerning part about this is that the right has made trans athletes as big a boogeyman as trans people using your bathroom. But as a parent, okay, great. So they have to just say that gender recognized based solely on reproductive biology, and then they can get Title IX funds. This is a slippery slope because how do we prove this?
Yeah.
Now, on my birth certificate, on my child's birth certificate, it says F for female. But how do we know the doctor didn't lie? Now I'm going to need you to do a test. I'm going to need you to go to the doctor, and I'm going to need a doctor to sign off on this form now that at 18 years old, you are a female with female reproductive organs. Like, there's going to have to be something put in place, right, to prove that these Title IX funds are not going to trans athletes. Like that,
Yep.
To me, this is a slippery slope and it's concerning.
Well,
the last
agreed.
one, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I agree.
Go ahead.
No, I was
Yeah.
going to say, I totally agree because that's the idea for all of these. Same with the first one about having to prove your American citizenship for
Yes.
voting or other things. Like
Yes.
now it's, oh, if you want to get benefits, if you want to get Medicare,
Yep.
Medicaid, if you want to do this, like, oh, you're going to have to prove your, like, okay, but now what else? Oh,
Right.
if you want
Where
to
do we
drive
stop?
Right. If you want to drive a car, if you what
Yes.
else are we going to make it to where you now have to prove your citizenship in order to participate?
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
100%, it's all slippery slope.
The very last one. This one was concerning to me because it's literally the one sentence and there's no clarification. They are going to make assaulting a law enforcement officer a deportable offense. It does not say that if you're in this country illegally and you assault a law enforcement officer, we're deporting you. It doesn't say that. It doesn't clarify that.
Yep.
Not from what I read. Maybe it clarifies it later and I just missed it, but I'm just like, that single statement is concerning. Because where are you going to deport me to? This is my country.
Well,
I'm not planning on assaulting a law enforcement officer. That's always been punishable.
Yeah.
You don't get away with that anywhere in this country.
So
unscathed.
So this is 100% like where it comes from, right? And obviously, while it doesn't explicitly say deporting immigrants,
right? That's who it's aimed at,
right? We can infer that's the point because to your point, if it was deporting like you or I, where are you going to deport us to? Like our home country is here, so I wouldn't be as concerned about like that argument, but and do not get me wrong. I 1000% believe in the safety and security of our police officers.
1000%.
While I understand the point of defund the police, I 100% also do have all the love and faith in the world in our police officers. And I think that it's a fine line. It's one of the few socialist programs that I think most of us can get behind. Mm-hmm. With that said, I also recognize the fact that I remember I have a friend who is married to a police officer who I absolutely love and adore. But I remember hearing stories about, that police officer beats his wife and that police officer drives drunk and that police officer has a problem with this. And like police officers are still human beings. And so while I understand this idea of we never should go into a scenario thinking we're going to assault a police officer, I also when there are examples of protests, there are times that police officers get injured because protests break out, and taking away our fundamental constitutional right to protest. Now, what are you trying to do? Take away our guns? Like,
Right.
what's next?
Well, and
if you're taking
when
away our right to protest, now we have a problem.
and when we're
And
peacefully protesting and you throw tear gas to just get rid of us, that's inciting violence.
that's right. And it doesn't say anything about in the course of him doing his job or her doing her job.
Right.
So
Good
now,
point.
if they are January 6th insurrectionists
Yep.
and happen to be a police officer as a job, and you're a police officer at Washington, D.C.,
Which
and you
we know
attack them,
happened. We know that happened, that there
exactly
were
correct.
off-duty officers that were part of that insurrection.
That's exactly correct. Now, do you run the risk of being deported? Like,
Yeah, when they're
there's
not in uniform.
That's right. So now
Yeah.
you have fundamental questions about, okay, what exactly does this mean? Because if we grant any group of people in this country too much power, like we are with Elon Musk and our corporate
Yep.
overlords,
Yep.
we have seen it over and over and over again. The point of the government is to ensure that these groups that are too strong don't continue to, wield too much power, and that the people are protected. And when you continue to give this type of power to people, and this type of blanket statements, if you touch a police officer, no matter what, you're going to be deported. Now we have a problem, right? So,
and if we have an officer who is a racist and
which we know exists,
antagonizes, and has existed since the beginning of law enforcement, and antagonizes a confrontation between themselves and someone that they believe is not a citizen.
That's right. Do we let them kneel on the neck of someone and kill them? Do we just have to stand back and let them kill somebody when they shouldn't be?
Yeah.
Do we let them just pull Rodney King out of his truck and beat the fuck out of him until he's next to dead? Like, we just have to stand there and let that happen for fear that someone might get deported. Like, there has to be a checks and balances. And if there's one thing that our, again, elected officials have to do, it's represent the people.
Yes.
The police,
that put them in their positions.
That's right. The police have, to your point, it is resisting arrest, assaulting a police officer. There are laws against that those already exist. But to put blanket statements down that say, if you touch a police officer and you happen to be an immigrant, you're getting deported no matter what. I mean, we've seen it on how inefficient the 3 strikes and you're out rule are for drugs.
Yes.
You are caught with marijuana 3 times. That's it. You're out. You are stuck in the federal prison for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? These are the kinds of things when we create
for
these
a nonviolent offender.
For nonviolent offenders. This is where, if you make these blanket laws, you'll see those. When you fuck around with them, you'll find out. That's
exactly right. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly right. So that was all I was that's all I had.
Well, I love it because those are definitely concerns and things that we'll watch in the next several weeks to see what happens there.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Any other thoughts? No?
No, I don't think so. We'll
Nothing
see what
from
the
me
next
either.
week brings.
Yeah, it's interesting. The last couple of weeks, it's interesting because when we were preparing for this podcast, I'm like, not a lot's going on. Are we really going to? And then I'm like, oh my fucking God, it's an hour later and we've talked about a billion things. So clearly there are still things going on. But definitely I feel like next week things will start to pick up again. And just watching Elon Musk and Steve Bannon and the party do their infighting has been a fun little joyous Christmas present to us. So Happy New Year to all of us.
That's exactly right. Yes.
I'm going to, again, try and keep dry January. I'll report back next week on whether or not I'm able to maintain. We'll see what happens.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you all for spending this time with us. These keep getting longer and longer. I know we said it's only going to be a half an hour, but here we are at 58 minutes and 48 seconds. So at the end of the day, I would not count on that. But if we have a week that's shorter, it'll be shorter regardless. I hope you guys all enjoy the content. If you guys have anything that you would like us to touch on or any comments that you would like to make, feel free to post those below. And we, of course, will do our best to look at those. Although I say that, and I have not looked at any of the comments from any of our podcasts for like the last 3.
I was
So
going to say, I don't think I have either. Yeah.
I'll try and do that before our next podcast, because if there are any comments, then we should address them, since we keep telling people we will.
That we will. Yeah.
Right. It would be nice of us to actually do that. And not just be the hypocrites that we can be. Right. Anyway. All right. Well, thank you all for joining, and we appreciate you joining us. And like and subscribe, share this with your friends, please. And again, if you have any comments, let us know.
That's right.
Bye.
Bye.